I drive because I love my children on the bus. I started off driving to be at home with my children on snow days and holidays. And in that 24-year time that I've been with the county, I have enjoyed every child on my bus and the families and the connections I've met.
Why do I drive? I drive because of the students. It's those students that make my day. You make relationship with these students, and even after they graduate from high school, they'll come up and give you a hug and let you know that they appreciate you and what you did.
I love driving a school bus because I had a school bus driver that I admired, and I always watched her, and she was a great person, and that challenged me to be a good bus driver. And I was a trainer for 2 years for Roanoke County, and I loved it. I enjoyed showing people what I do.
This is a family. We consider ourselves part of the transportation family. And once you become part of the family, you stay part of the family. We learn about each other's family, we support each other, we're there for each other, and we have fun while we're doing it. We get to help the students, we get to be there for them and support them.
I drive the school bus because I wanted to have some adult interaction as a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to get out, and driving with Roanoke County, I have great students. I've enjoyed this for nearly 20 years now, and I also like being a part of the community, and they trust me with their kids, and I enjoy being with my students.
I enjoy driving. The best part about driving the school bus is the children that I pick up every day.
Why?
Because they keep me younger. I'm 78 years old. They keep me younger.
I retired from public service, and I stayed at home and did all my honeydews, and basically I got bored. I wanted something to do. My wife was a teacher, so this allowed me to have money and time off during the summer.
We do this to have something to do. A lot of our drivers are retirees, and they come out to do their community service and have a routine and have a reason to get up in the morning, and they get a little extra fun money to go on vacation and that kind of stuff. So it's a great job.
My best friend's been driving for over 10 years. And he said, look, if you're gonna work part-time, you might as well make as much money as you can. And for a part-time job, it pays pretty good for this area. I enjoy the elementary kids more than I do anything. But it's been a lot of fun.
People tell me that, how can you drive kids? And I'm like, hey, that's the best part of the job. The rest of it's a piece of cake. So, but I really enjoy, driving, and keeps me active, gets me up in the morning.
I drive the school bus because I love it. It's an awesome job. I love going and picking up the students, watching them get on the bus, the little ones with the big smiles on their face, wondering, all the excitement they're going to be doing while they're going to school, middle, high school. I drive all ages. It's just a wonderful job.
I drive because I'm retired Navy, and it's great, after serving my country, to give back to my community. Our kids are the future of America, and it's great to have a part to where I'm contributing to them and to make sure that they get what they need.
We will train you from the get-go. We should be able to help you through the whole process of getting your learner's permit, getting your endorsements, and then we have a 24-hour classroom training that we do. and then we do your 24-hour on the road training. So we do all of it in-house. All you need to do is come with a love for children.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to reconvene our Thursday, January 28, 2021 Roanoke County School Board meeting to order. May I have us read out of closed session, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I move the Roanoke County School Board come out of closed session for the following: to discuss ongoing personnel matters under investigation pursuant to the personnel exemption at 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, and for consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to actual or probable litigation and consultation with legal counsel regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to 2.2-3711A7 of the Code of Virginia. Also move to certify that to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under this chapter, and only such public business matters were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened, were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting by the school board.
Second.
Madam Clerk, the roll.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Since there was no action from closed, we'll open up the public meeting. Would you join me with the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve
So
the
moved.
agenda?
Second.
Madam Clerk, the roll.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right, we have, let's see, we have no presentations and recognitions. We're going to move on to the public hearing portion of the budget, of the meeting. Let's see, where are we? Oh, okay, I'm sorry about that. All right, public hearing on the 2021-2022 school budget. At this time, I'll open the public hearing to anyone that would like to speak concerning the 2021-2022 school budget. Having none, at this time, we will close the public hearing, and we'll move to Agenda 7, which is the hearing of citizens and delegations. Before we do that, let me just review, if you don't mind, the rules with respect to public speakers. That each speaker will be given 3 minutes to comment whether speaking as individual or a representative. The speaker may not defer his or her time to any other person. The chairman will enforce the rules unless instructed by the majority of the board to do otherwise. The speaker will be limited to a presentation of their point of view only. Questions of clarification may be entertained by the board. All comments must be directed to the board chair. Debate between a recognized speaker and the audience is not allowed. The school board chair is responsible for recognizing all speakers, for maintaining proper order, and for adhering to the time limits stated above. The school board chair is authorized to stop and or have removed any speaker who uses language that is obscene, vulgar, profane, constitutes fighting words, true threats, or solicitation to commit crimes, and incites imminent lawless action. The school board chair may stop and or have removed any person who disrupts or threatens to disrupt the orderly functioning of the meeting, by among other things, making loud, boisterous, or threatening comments. Speakers are requested to leave any written statements or comments with the board clerk. Thank you. All right, our first speaker this evening is Rachel Worcester. Ms. Worcester, just please state your name and your address.
So my name is Rachel Worcester. I live in Roanoke City at 2027 Denison Avenue Southwest. I'm here once again to ask the board to commit to following CDC and Health Department guidelines. Since my previous comments at the meeting last week, an additional 55 people, 19 staff members, and 36 students have tested positive for coronavirus in Roanoke County schools. This means that 11% of our total cases for the entire school year were reported in the last 10 days. 26% of our total cases for the school year have been reported in the last 3.5 weeks since we returned from winter break. Despite this fact, in the same time frame, we have gone from the board following CDC and local health guidelines, to the board going against the guidelines to allow for some sports, to the board considering the possibility of allowing regional and state competitions and having an in-person senior night, all of which go against health department guidelines and your own statements from earlier this month to keep sports local. Your employees are asking you to commit to following health department guidance designed to keep all of us, students, teachers, staff, and their families safe. At many meetings this year, you have each spoken about your appreciation for teachers and the hard work and sacrifices we have made this year, and how you can never do enough for us. In this instance, your actions speak much louder than your words. You can show your appreciation by upholding your word to follow CDC and health department guidelines. Teachers are still at least 3 weeks away from being immune. Now is not the time to further deviate from health guidelines and introduce more potential for the spread of COVID-19 in our schools and in our community. The decisions made in this room affect all of us. By working together, we can keep each other safe. Thank you.
Our next speaker this evening is Sandra Rubin.
Good evening.
May we have your name and address, please?
Sorry. Sandra Rubin, 5541 Ingleside, Roanoke, Virginia.
Welcome.
Thank you. Best practices. That's what we as professionals are asked to do and to use when we're teaching. The current global pandemic affords us the opportunity to ensure that best practices in teaching are combined with the opportunity to see our students safely through to the end of the school year. As a school system, we've been a shining light for others in the educational community. I commend Roanoke County Public Schools for the immense efforts early on that went into planning for the resources and logistics to carry on with educating young minds while also ensuring the safety of our charges. We've made great strides in doing what is best for kids given the conditions present in our community. So let's not drop the ball, so to speak, this late in the game. But in actuality, dropping the ball might be the best option at this point. Best practices would require us to look at local positivity data and follow the advice of national and state health agencies before we move forward with opening up games for our young athletes. I was a bit shocked and disheartened to hear that sports teams were already allowed to begin practices and engage in competition with other schools within our system. Was this decision made following best practices, or are we setting up our youth and consequently the surrounding community for more infections and further exhaustion on the local medical health care systems? We're so very close to being in a position that allows for the social and recreational interactions so adamantly sought for our young students. Let's not drop the ball. Let's stay the course and continue doing what we know is best. It's hard and everyone is tired, but that shouldn't affect our rational making of important decisions. At the 11th hour of the day, or with figurative seconds left on the game clock, we need to do what's necessary. Decisions for opening sports was the wrong one at this time based on positivity rates in our community for the virus. Practices and competitive events should be canceled until we have lower rates of positivity. Students and adults needed to run the sports program have had the opportunity to be inoculated against the coronavirus, and the health system leaders have given us the go-ahead to begin play. Our students need us to be smart and make the right decisions and choices for them. Our health community systems need us to follow best practices so that we do not contribute to the current problems that they face in providing support for all who are in need. We owe it to everyone to listen to what good science has shown us is the correct way to proceed during this global time of pandemic. Thank you.
Welcome. The next speaker this evening is Margaret Moore. May we have your address and name, please?
Yes, 3025 Winterberry Drive, Roanoke, Virginia, 24018. Dr. Nicely, Dr. McClung, members of the board, I'm a teacher at Cave Spring Middle School. I do want to commend the board and those that have made decisions regarding the safety measures in our school, which make it possible for us to go into the classroom each day and continue to teach our students. However, I am aware that we have a minority of students and parents who feel that their extracurricular activities are more important than the curriculum that we, as a school district, are required to implement. And I want to commend and thank as well our silent majority, our parents who are keeping their children at home. Those are parents that have had to have those difficult conversations with their children, that have had to say, no, we have to postpone things this year. I want to thank them and acknowledge their sacrifices. Because of them, I can go into my classroom each day and fearlessly teach my students. And those children, my students that come into my class each day, that have missed out on their birthday parties, those sleepovers, their holiday get-togethers, those events that were important for them as developing adolescents, they have made that sacrifice, and there won't be a banquet for them. There won't be a name in the newspaper. There won't be a trophy for them. There won't be anything to acknowledge their sacrifice. But as a teacher, I want to thank those parents and those students. And that's the only comment that I had to make. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next speaker this evening is Sarah Goodman. Welcome.
Hi, Sarah Goodman, 5712 Bighorn Drive, Roanoke. Members of the board, Dr. Nicely, thank you all. I know you all probably get tired of hearing from me and Tim Summers all the time as our CEA representatives and feel like you know what's going to come out of our mouths when we're up here, although you've had a bit of a break from us recently as we've been staying away from this building. But tonight I actually want to read a letter from a teacher at my school, Cynthia Bowen. And so I'll be reading directly her letter from her perspective. So I'm Cynthia Bowen. I teach at Cave Spring Middle School. I live with 4 others, including my father-in-law, who is now in his 70s and has not been able to get the vaccine. I received my first COVID vaccination, and now a new, more contagious variant of COVID has been detected in the Commonwealth. I'm grateful that so many of my colleagues and I were given priority to register for the mass vaccination clinic last week. However, it will be at least another 3 weeks before the booster shot and a stronger immunity is developed. I'm nervous about the COVID variants, especially after listening to today's episode of NPR's science podcast, Shortwave. It's worth a listen if you have 15 minutes to spare, and I have the link if anyone wants to email me for it. I am against intra-district sporting events at this time, and I believe introducing inter-district sporting events and adding more students to classrooms anytime soon would be a mistake. There's not enough vaccine available in our region to ward off community spread as we face the uncertainty of new variant strains. I would like to read this letter publicly myself at Thursday's school board meeting, but I don't feel it is responsible to attend any non-essential in-person indoor gatherings at this time. Please prioritize both the welfare of our school system's frontline workers and our community at large by not lifting any current restrictions. Thank you for your consideration. I was also asked to add, the CDC has clearly stated that schools are only safe to be open with mitigation strategies, including 6 feet distancing and masks, and that sports do contribute to community spreading. And we ask that you commit to following the guidelines of medical professionals. Thank you all.
You're welcome. All right, thank you. Item number 8, report by Student Advisory Council, Mr. Mark Linkus. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Nicely. My name is Mark Linkus, and I'm a senior at Glenver High School. So the Student Advisory Council has not met since our last meeting on January 6th, but our next meeting will be on Wednesday, February 3rd over a WebEx call. So thank you for your ongoing interest and support in the Student Advisory Council.
Thank you. All right, agenda item number 9, the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, the roll.
Mr. Greenway.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Morat.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Linden.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Ray.
Ma'am.
Mr. Butzer.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, on to agenda number 10, action items. The first one up for consideration, 10.01, consideration of allowing middle school sports for fall season. Dr. Rhonda Segal, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, and Dr. Nicely. So I'd like to begin to share the impact that COVID-19 has had so far on our winter sports season. So to date, we have had no exposures within winter teams, the actual teams. We've had positive athletes and positive adults who have contracted COVID-19 outside in the community and have brought it into the school or into the setting of the team sports. However, there have been no exposures to those positive people. So there are a couple things that I want to share with you just to make sure we're totally transparent on this. There have been exposures from other activities that have involved athletes, so we want to make sure that we're clear with that. Just as an example, we've had one student who was potentially exposed by a positive parent. And so there was a game that took place, a competition, and right after that competition, we found out that parent was positive, assumed that the child could be positive. We immediately quarantined everyone that person came in contact with and quarantined those people. A couple days later, the kid tested negative. So that quarantine was lifted. Those people came back to school and came back to their team. There was a more significant outbreak in a weight room situation. So in that situation, it was at a high school where multiple teams were lifting weights together. They were in pods and following the protocol and doing what they were supposed to do. However, they were rotating from group to group from different activities within the setting. There was one positive student in that setting, and then there was a positive staff member, and we consider that to be an outbreak because neither one of those two people think they could have gotten COVID anywhere else other than that situation. So when that happens, the health department determines that an outbreak. So what happens then is what our tracing led to is there were 2 days of activity of this weightlifting taking place. So we had to track every single athlete and every single adult that was connected to that activity on those 2 days. That ended up being 24 students and 6 adults. So our nurse immediately quarantined all of those individuals. And what we did is immediately turn it over to the health department. We asked the health department to trace it for us since it was considered an outbreak. They did so, came back, and their recommendation was for us to close the weight room for 14 days, which we had already done, and to quarantine 6 of the individuals and 2 adults because they they met the criteria of exposure. So those numbers, all those other individuals were returned back to work, back to school, and back to their teams. So, I just wanted to share that information because there has been some impact, but if you're talking about our actual winter sports teams, we have had 0 exposures. And we've been going for 3 weeks now. All right, for the 10.01. So for middle school sports, just wanted to share with you where we stand currently with our middle school sports. Our teams are following phase 2 guidance, which basically means conditioning and drill work with no sharing of a ball. So all they're really doing is individual work. And they still are meeting and practicing under those terms. We are still following the CDC and the VDH metric system that we were originally following with our high school teams. So that the middle school team's still under that protocol. And of course, we have not reached the level of moderate to where we could allow them to play at this time. And they also have agreed to follow the 60% rule that the high school is following as well. So they would be playing a shorter schedule on top of that if they were allowed to play. So the conversation, well, before I get into that, the schools that are currently participating in our area in middle school sports, we have Central Academy, we have Reed Mountain, Clifton Forge, Floyd, and Benjamin Franklin. So our teams, if they were to play a district schedule, those are some of the teams that are actively participating and that they would potentially play. So I think the conversation around this action item today is consideration for middle school sports to fall in line with what the board has decided for the high school sports, and that is to play in-county schedule. This would have to impact the fall sport because winter ends this week for middle school. So it would not be impactful for the winter season, but this would be the fall season that we're talking about. So I think the conversation here would be Is that something that the board would like to entertain, allowing middle schools for fall sports to follow the in-county schedule?
All right. Now we're going to open this up for discussion among the board. Mr. Ray?
Yeah. Dr. Stegall, would you, since we're streaming and people might not understand what sports this involves?
So, so for fall sports, that would be middle school football, volleyball, and cheer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I have a few comments that I want to reiterate that I made during the work session earlier this month, and I question why, again, we're just playing favorites with our athletes. I kind of perceive this as almost playing favorites with athletes as opposed to students in the band or theater or drama or choir or any other extracurricular activities. And I certainly hope it's not because our athletes are the most important. And I hope even more so that it's not because those athletes and those parents are making the most amount of noise, because if that's the case, we're going to hear more noise from other people about wanting to get them in. So I've seen some emails where people question, oh, you're hindering our ability to get scholarships. I don't know that I buy into that. People in band get scholarships. People in drama and theater get scholarships. People in art get scholarships. And let's face it, the majority of our athletes, if they're going to get a scholarship, it's not based on what they're doing necessarily in high school sports. It's travel sports or summer camps or things along those lines. So I don't know why we're just considering these action items for athletes personally. And then, as I mentioned back in the work session, we've been wildly successful with our back-to-school plan as it's been following CDC and health department guidelines. And I'm not going to sit up here and pretend that I know more than Dr. Morrow. I'm certainly not as smart as Dr. Nicely. I just wonder, following the health department guidelines seems to me to make the most sense, especially when we get down to middle school sports. I'm prepared on a couple of these other items to consider maybe allowing those, but when you get down to middle school sports, I think we're going beyond what we need to do health department wise. So, and then the last thing that makes me wonder on all these topics. After the last meeting 9 days ago, I asked one of my fellow board members if they wanted to come watch the Northside basketball game the following night, and the response I got was, there's no way you'll see me in one of those gyms until after I have the vaccine. And here we are, we're allowing coaches and cheerleaders and senior parents, athletic directors, trainers, principals, clock operators. There are a lot of people in those gymnasiums, and that's a personal preference as to whether or not they're going in the gym or not. But I think that says a lot as to whether or not we're doing the right thing in this situation.
Any other comments or discussion? May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, the roll.
Mr. Greenway?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Morrell?
Yes.
Mr. Linden?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Ray?
Yes.
Mr. Butzer?
Yes. All right, 10.02, consideration of allowing student participation in postseason play for winter sports. Dr. Segal?
Yes, okay. So we have two regions that our teams play for. We have Cave Spring, Hidden Valley, Northside, and William Byrd all play for Class 3 Region D. There are 12 teams in that region. Currently, there are 4 teams who are playing in that region. We make up the other 4, and there are 4 teams who have chosen not to play. So if Roanoke County Schools were to join into the region play, there would be 8 teams in the region out of 12 playing for this region. And I have the start dates listed because one of the reasons why we wanted to push this topic is because our first start date's February 1st. for wrestling, swim, and dive. And then we have February 6th, 8th, and 13th for basketball, basketball, indoor track, and scholastic ball. So this decision is kind of pushed because we do start activity fairly soon. If you take a look at the Class 2 region, and that's Region C, that's the region that Glenver is in. There are 14 teams in that region. 11 of the 14 teams have agreed they're playing or currently playing. The other 3 teams, the boards are currently of those school divisions making decisions if they're going to allow those teams to advance to play. And you'll notice that swim starts January 30th. So we do have a quick timeline for that. And then the other dates that are there for basketball, February 14th, wrestling, February 9th, indoor track, February 8th, and scholastic ball, February 13th. So the discussion for this topic is a decision on whether we will allow our high school teams to advance to region and state play.
Questions from board members? Discussion? Mr. Greenway?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So did you just do class, and I'm trying to follow this a little quicker, but did you just do Class 3 and you're going to do Class 4 after that, or is this together?
This is all our teams.
Sure. Okay.
For the region.
And so Class 3, you're saying there's only 8 that would be in the region?
Correct.
And how many in class or region?
There's 11.
11 in that one.
Mm-hmm. And 8 only if our 4 teams join in. There's currently only 4. Gotcha. And I should say this, both regions have made the determination that it's considered an all-in tournament. So every single team who's able to play will be placed in the tournament. And of course, as you win, you progress through the tournament and you progress on to state. So every school that the school allows them to play, they can be placed into the tournament.
In reading through the recommendation that I thought I saw in an email the other day, you said it was as long as we were the host team in that situation. Are we going to allow our teams, if they're not the host team, to travel?
That will be another. In order to advance to postseason play, they will have to travel.
That's part that's part of this recommendation.
Mm-hmm. It would be part of this recommendation. We would be allowing them to travel. In that, there's another action item about hosting. So the top seed would host, and we could deny that capability of hosting and turn that back over to the lower seed school, and we could travel to them. So that was the topic in the other action item.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So if we host, they would have to follow our guidelines of social distancing, mask on the bench, so on.
Yes, they would. Okay. Regions are meeting this week to work through those particulars. But what I think that our 4 schools are going to recommend, at least in this region, is that the host school follow their protocols in their school. So I am going to tell you that we need to be prepared for this, because there are divisions that require masks to be played at all times during activity. We currently do not require that during activity. So if we were to go to Montgomery County and play, that is their requirement. So we would follow suit with their protocols.
No spectators.
Right, no spectators. Now, there could be a school division that allows spectators, but we're still at the 25 cap by state law, or the state executive order, so they still can't go over the 25 number.
Look, I may just suggest, just so we don't get off track, 10.03 about hosting, we're going to get to that agenda item. What we're talking about is 10.02, which is allowing post-season play, which assumes you obviously have to travel to play postseason. So it's a given. It's the question before us after that is whether or not we want to host one of these events. Okay.
Correct.
Any other discussion on 10.2?
Question, yes. You said 12 teams in the region, but then you divided it up, right?
Yeah, so there's 12 teams in this one region. There's 4 of us, and then there's 4 teams that are currently already playing, and then there's 4 teams that have decided not to play. Okay. So in this one region, there's potentially 8 teams that could play. And then in Glenver's region, 11 of the 14 teams are playing.
Just to be clear, if this passes, we're giving them the opportunity, these winter sports teams, to play through the state championship if they get that far.
Correct. And that would mean traveling to if they host or travel, but they would be large-scale events, wrestling tournaments, indoor track meets. Most of those would be in Montgomery County.
All right, any other questions, discussion? May I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, the roll?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right, 10.03, consideration of allowing schools to host postseason play. Dr. Segal.
Okay, so when we look at wrestling and indoor track, swim and dive, those are all large-scale events. So currently our region has already found a location to hold all these events for our regions. So our school division will not be asked to host any of the large-scale events. They've already found a replacement for that. So the only discussion we really need to have at this time, we've also have not been asked to host any state level events. So really the only discussion here now is basketball, and both boys and girls, the top seed would host, and so we would be asking for the opportunity for the schools to host. If not, our schools will be traveling to every game they play.
Any questions, comments? I do have a question. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but is it your opinion, is it staff's opinion, if we host, we have a little more control, don't we?
We're
do.
Yes.
Making sure that social distancing, masking spectators. So one of the advantage possibly of allowing us to host is that we have control over the venue and what people are doing in that venue.
Correct, we do. We, of course, are in charge of who enters the venue, so we could make sure we strictly stick to the count and make sure we don't go over the 25 limit. We could say no spectators because that is our protocol currently. And all of our protocols we have in place we would currently follow. So, yeah, I think absolutely. We do have, you don't really know what other school divisions do until you get there. So at least we do know what we're dealing with here in Roanoke County.
Any other discussion or questions? May I have a motion to approve? 1003? Second?
Second.
I'll do a second.
Mr.
Madam
Greenway.
Clerk, the roll?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. All right. 10.04, funding for fall and winter sports.
Okay, as we have conversations about the budget, the one thing I just want to say up front, this would be a discussion for another meeting, but when we start fall sports, we will have to have a discussion of whether the board intends to continue on with in-county scheduling, or if it's your discretion to open up conversation about following district schedules. Our fall sports start February 4th. Their first competition is February 22nd. So we have to have a fairly quick discussion about that if that's the board's desire, because we would need to build schedules. So keeping that in mind, currently we're following the board's decision to play in-county schedules, and that's what we will be prepared for unless there's discussion otherwise. And when we talk about that, the price difference, just so you know, the budget is here for all three sports. If we happen to play district schedule, we're only talking $100 per team difference in travel expense. So all the expenses would be fairly the same, except if we were to travel to Montgomery County, we may have to take two buses if we're playing, two JV and varsity, because we're not going to get all the kids on the same bus. Here in Roanoke County, we can commute kids and use the same bus back and forth. But if we go somewhere up in New River Valley, we may or may not have time to do that. So it may cost a little bit more with transportation. Okay, so winter sports, if we take a look at that budget, that's what we're currently in. It's boys basketball, girls basketball, indoor track, swim, and wrestling. And the estimated cost for winter sports is $30,000. Keeping in mind that's a much abbreviated schedule since we had a late start, so that's why the cost is significantly less there. And then what we're looking at here is we're looking for officials, any transportation to these events, any rental fees, and any cost to the school. So $30,000 would be the estimate for winter sports. Fall sports, that's considered competition cheer, cross country, football, golf, and volleyball. Same thing there. We're looking at officials, transportation, game workers, and police. We typically have police officers who work our football games. However, if the spectator numbers not increase, we may not have spectators, so there may be a decrease in the need for that. However, that cost would be $69,800. And then for spring sports, you can look at that total. It's quite significant. The reason being there's more spring sports teams. We have baseball, softball, boys soccer, boys lacrosse, boys tennis, girls tennis, and track. So counting all those same costs in, and it would be $128,920. So for a grand total of $228,720 to cover and fund all 3 seasons of sports. I will say that is without revenue. So if we happen to get to a point where they are allowed to have spectators, we could then consider recouping some of the revenue. So
thank you, Dr. Scott. I appreciate that. Normally these costs are shouldered by the schools.
Absolutely.
Correct? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Yeah.
How the schools pay for these is typically the revenue off of football and basketball. And so the income that they make off of those 2 sports pays for the rest of this.
Right.
Any other questions? One that I have is, and maybe you mentioned this, do we know where we're pulling this 223 from?
Yes, so funding source, based on the January 26 Board of Supervisors work session, county staff proposed to amend revenues and subsequently the Roanoke County Public Schools allocated for additional $1,681,342. The first reading of the ordinance will be on February 9th, and the second reading will be on February 23rd. Ms. Peterson will incorporate this as a first line item of appropriation for use of this additional funding. She will bring appropriation requests to you for consideration on February 11th. In the meantime, there is enough unspent budget in the administration department to fund the school's sports needs until the budget can be met.
All right, thank you.
And then once those funds will be transferred over, is that correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
All right. Do I have a motion for the funding of fall and winter sports?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Madam Clerk, the roll.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. All right, since we have no informational items tonight on Agenda 11, we'll move on to 12, report by Superintendent. Dr. Nicely.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm going to refer to this graphic here in a minute, so I'm going to give my report from the lectern this evening. First of all, I just want to commend Mark over here as our leader of our Student Advisory Council, not only because he, even when there's not necessarily a report, he's still coming to the meetings and so forth and doing what he needs to do. But I've also seen this guy in action in terms of how he leads the students from all 10 of our middle schools and high schools and lead these meetings and just does an exceptional job. So thank you, Mark, for your leadership there, and thank you what the Student Advisory Committee does. Secondly, I want to just remind the board that this was a really important week for the school system. On Monday, we welcomed our all of our fourth graders in person, except for those who continue to be 100% online. And I just want to thank all of the teachers and their principals and everybody in our elementary schools who have just been really creative and driven to find solutions, to make that happen. So just grateful for their continued problem-solving skills, their positive mindset. We've received several emails this week reflecting that, and just so appreciative of that, because all that rubs off on the students. So just really grateful for them, as well as our 5th through 12th grade teachers who welcomed back additional students this week, students who are identified needing some extra assistance. So they're, of course, doing the 4-day-a-week schedule. And I personally know one of those middle school teachers in my house, and she was just really thrilled, and the students were thrilled to be back together. So just good to see those things and do what we need to do. This, of course, is continuing to follow the state's health department and local health department guidelines, the mitigation strategy, the 6-foot distancing, the masking, as we've been encouraged to do, and just so proud of all of our teachers, our staff, our principals for everything they've done to make that happen, and of course appreciative of the students and the parents for their support as well. We also had a huge event started on Friday, as the board is aware, and that is the kickoff for the vaccinations for the Group 1B, which includes our teachers, our staff, and so grateful for the local health department as well as Carillion, who are huge partners in supplying those vaccinations for the kickoff on Friday. And so, those who couldn't get appointments on Friday, of course, have been doing those through other days. But one thing we've learned from the Virginia Department of Education on Tuesday is that they want to collect information from all the 132 school districts in Virginia regarding, how's it going? How many of the teachers and staff are, getting the vaccinations and so forth? And so they're actually asking for a weekly report on that information. And so we've sent that survey information to our staff to ask for that so we can make sure that everybody is being taken care of. And we'll continue to report that to the VDOE, not names or anything, it's just total numbers to the VDOE on a weekly basis. So we were able to, because of really wanted to support that mass vaccination on Friday, do a work day for our teachers. So thanks, board, for your support and give us the flexibility to do that. And of course, the follow-up vaccination will be on February 12th. And again, we don't want anything to get in the way of our staff and teachers to be able to do that. So I know that disrupts our schedule. I know there are neighbors who are going to do that as a remote learning day, but really we just want to make that unencumbered for our teachers to be able to have access to those vaccinations on February 12th for the second one to make sure everybody can get that. So thank you to the board for your support and letting us do that. Also wanted to say that the vaccination for our staff, of course, is a huge step forward. It does not solve all the issues, of course, but it is a piece of it. And so that, as well as continued community support with trying to get the numbers down and so forth, are hugely important to help schools not only here in Roanoke County but across the state and country to move forward. So we continue to ask our community for your help in trying to get that down, but the vaccination piece, of course, is a huge step forward. Finally, I want to just draw attention to something that serves as our centerpiece that drives us in terms of what we do in terms of our strategic vision for our school division, and really serves as that sort of filter through which our decisions are made. And that's our Sea Change framework. And so thank you, Chuck, for pulling up that logo, that graphic, to represent that, because it just reminds me of how everybody just pulls together through just incredibly challenging, incredibly difficult situations, and especially when there's disagreement about how to do things and so forth. But this is what binds us, and it reminds me of the center of what we do is learning. The center of what we do is taking care of our kids and making sure that they're advancing. We talk about deeper learning, and even in the midst of crazy schedules and so forth, I just see time and time again the creative ways that our teachers are still making those opportunities happen. We're still developing those skills, those C's we talk about. That's why we call it the Sea Change framework, such as creativity and collaboration and communication, critical thinking, and citizenship. I'm going to come back to those. But of course, none of that happens in a vacuum. So, I'll tell our principals all the time, this work is complex, right? There's a reason that not everybody gets in the line to, sign up to want to be a teacher or to be a school administrator. It's because this is not as easy as it looks when you're sitting in a classroom, growing up. This is complex work, and so we're constantly asking folks to spin multiple plates and keep them all going at the same time. We tend to focus on different things at different times when things get a little wobbly and we need to pay special attention. But the idea of school climate and making sure that we have respectful environments and safe environments, that's still important to us. Balance when it comes to things like teaching and learning and assessment. Our learning culture, making sure that all kids are included, and that we foster inquisitive mindsets. So we want to continue learning, and we model that as professionals. Professional growth, supporting our staff in their own development, and of course all the support services, all the things that make that happen, from everything the technology folks do to finance to maintenance, our transportation staff, of course, all the folks that make this happen. But I want to highlight the C's on the going around deeper learning for a moment, because when we talk about collaboration, communication, citizenship, that means that we're not only teaching those skills to our students, but also we're modeling that as educators. And so we try to model respectfulness. We try to listen to each other. We have to, in order to collaborate, we have to listen to each other. We have to seek to understand, right? And that's where critical thinking comes in. Creativity, we've got to learn how to problem solve. How many problems have we had to solve this year that we've never had to do before? And citizenship's that last fifth piece. And I think more than ever, as we look at the nature of public discourse, citizenship is so important now more than ever. And again, not only do we have the responsibility to teach those skills, we need to model them as well. And so I'm so grateful when folks do that. Just because people disagree, I know as board members, even among 5 people, there's not always 100% agreement. But that doesn't mean disagreement does not mean we don't listen to each other. That doesn't mean we don't value each other's opinions. That doesn't mean that we don't respect for one another. We still may disagree, but that's just all part of the process of making tough choices. So I know even this evening, I thank our speakers and public comments for voicing their concerns, communicating, but doing so in a respectful way. That's what our country is built on. That's what citizenship's all about. So I want to thank our school board, because I respect all 5 of you. I know you're in this for the right reason. Your heart's about kids. Even when folks disagree, it's all about working together and modeling these things for our kids. I want to thank our teachers who, we're all in central office working in all 27 schools trying to help out. Bonsack gets the short end of the stick right now because they've got me. But the few hours I can get over there every week and just tutoring kids and working with them, it's just a great thing to do. But that's what our teachers do each and every day. So I want to thank them. All of our staff, including those who are out there at 5 o'clock this morning, 3 o'clock in the morning checking roads, very important. Of course, all of our parents, thank you for not only helping our kids learn these skills, but every time that we model that for them in terms of what good citizenship is all about, I think we're doing really important work. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nicely. All right. Agenda 1301, reports and inquiries of board members. Greenway.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Nicely. That was a great way to bring us all together. Thank you. And not only does Bonsack get the short end of the stick because you're so busy, they've got Mr. Linden as a... I couldn't pass that up. So one quick question, Dr. Nicely and maybe Dr. Stegall and Dr. McClung, if this is the case. We've had a member get the vaccination maybe a little too soon. Is there any message that we're asking the doctors, or is there a message we should be sending to our people about if you've had COVID in the last 30 to 90 days? And I'm asking this I know I'm hitting you blindsided, but
I'd like to respond to that, if you will, because I think the public message is important, and that is, I think that's really important. Each individual has to take the responsibility to have that conversation with that doctor, but I know a lot of people have done that. So certainly everybody wants as many people to be vaccinated as possible, but I think it's really important, for folks to have that conversation with their doctor, especially if they have particular situations, right, to get that advice.
All right. Do we have a responsibility? Maybe we don't, but it's almost, should we encourage people to ask their doctors? Is it Dr. Stegall's got I think she's got.
We sent out an email, and when we sent that email with the directions for individuals to sign up, at the bottom of that email, it did say that if you've had COVID, you need to talk to your primary care physician for them to make the decision to whether you should get it. And it is a recommendation that you wait 90 days. So that was in the email we sent to staff.
Okay, thank you. So, I just want to make sure that they hear that, because I'd heard somebody else this week that said the same thing, that they had gotten it, 30, 45 days after. And it's kind of scary if they don't know that. So I didn't know. But thank you.
I'll say one more thing, Mr. Greenway, to your point. I know when folks arrive to get their vaccination, one of the questions that they're asked is if they've had it, but I believe the window they're asking is, have you had it in the last 2 weeks? So they're not saying 90 days, but I know that is something the health department asks people, is if they've had it within the time frame that they're, looking at.
Yeah, I was told that I should wait until, we're a little more clear. Next, Mr. Linden brought up other extracurricular activities. And as we're getting to the warmer months, I just wonder if we've thought about, and I don't know if Dr. Stegall is the right one to ask or in general, but that we can think about the other bands and choirs and, if they can be outside and they can distance and, some of that can happen, maybe we can, to Mr. Linden's point, maybe we can consider that. I think that's I'm sorry, here she comes again.
Yeah, I can address that.
You just stand up there.
Yeah, several of the schools have already talked about planning activities when we get the camera system in the gyms, doing some kind of band event so we can stream it to parents so they can see that. We've also considered having, once we get the stadiums opened up, we're going to have streaming capability there as well, allowing the bands to do their own performances. If we, depending on what the, the number of, so what is happening in the outdoor sports is you can have two parents or two people who can attend, two spectators for every person on the roster. So that will open up more ability for people to come to outdoor sports.
Dr. Stahl, that's a good point, too. So there's been some discussion about how that, and I don't know if this is from the governor or VHSL, but there's also some discussion that's kind of tied up, but that the cheerleaders couldn't come because of the spectator rule. Is that something we would be willing to look at? That I think it's important enough for the cheerleaders to have the ability to go to those games. And I know this would hurt, but we're doing it for basketball, we're doing it for winter, to say, maybe we reduce to one parent, just to give more room for the cheerleaders. But
we also have the band.
So is that a Title IX issue as well?
Actually, from what we're hearing from the VHSL, we can have two people for every one participant, and what they consider participants are anybody on the roster, the coaching staff, the chain crew, the officials. So there is a little bit of padding in there because you get two people, and you can only go up to 30% capacity. So we think we can definitely get the cheerleaders in under those numbers. Okay. We're going to struggle getting a large band in. Okay. So it may be we have to trade off, and cheerleaders come some games. The band, maybe a pep band comes, and the band rotates their group through. Okay. But we have thought about having some large-scale band events that we can stream, and maybe since it's outside in the stadium, we could invite two parents.
Wow, so you've done a lot of work. Thank you.
On that topic, if I may, sorry. Is VHSL doing that following health department and CDC guidelines? Or are they doing that for the almighty dollar, which they'd like to see?
Currently, it's under Executive Order, I want to say 72, where it already allows for outdoor sports. Each field can have two guests, two spectators per roster or per participant. And that will run through January 31st. So the VHSL is hopeful and have, I think, had some conversations. They think the governor will change that order and increase those numbers as we move into fall sports.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, don't be stepping on my time. Mr. Chairman, can I get my time back?
No, thank you.
Another question. We talked about having Dr. Hughes, and I thought she was coming tonight, but I may have misunderstood. Works. Okay, so we're doing it in the work. I haven't been able to read my emails today either. So, okay, thank you. So we'll talk about maybe some mental health issues with Dr. Hughes. Mr. Linkus, Dr. Nicely brought you up, and I want to say I try to say this every year to to your group and the leaders that come. It's amazing. You are so well spoken, and what a joy in this time when we don't get to see a lot of students, to see you and how you represent your school and how you represent Roanoke County, and we thank you for being here. I know it, at times, even when you come like tonight, and probably didn't have to, it's not unnoticed. We appreciate you and thank you for everything.
And I'm very proud that he's a Glenver High School student.
Yep. Well, and I am too, even though I'm not on that side of town. I am. Thank you so much. Last, and I'll be quiet, thank everyone that got the fourth graders back in school. Thank you, thank you, thank you. and hopefully we can move that, to the, we've had some discussions about different things, and I thank everyone that's been a part of that, and, maybe fifth graders around the corner, hopefully, and if not, we're doing a lot better than a lot of other school divisions. So thank everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo Dr. Nicely's comments about the vaccination and how exciting it is that the majority, I know not all of our teachers have been able to get it, but the majority of teachers and bus drivers and aides and everybody else in the school district. So the role that you played in making sure that the health department was able to get those vaccines out to our people is very much appreciated, and hopefully the second round of those vaccines will help brighten that light there at the end of the tunnel. So if we can, maybe, I know we were all somewhat shocked on the grades that Mr. Riley and Ms. Hogan showed us, I think back in early December. I don't know if it would be possible for the work session next month to get an update on how those grades have progressed, or the second 9 weeks.
Yes, Mr. Riley and Ms. Hogan were planning on doing that. The semester just closed, I think last week, and so there was a period of time where people were still getting stuff in. They did the corrections. They were prepared to share that early next month.
Excellent. And other than that, just want to congratulate Daniel Pereira, the Northside graduate who ended up being the #1 overall pick in the MLS draft last week, I believe it was. So he, it's nice to see a Northside graduate who went on to Virginia Tech and only played there for 1 year, but it's nice to see him do so well. So congratulations to Daniel. That's all I have.
I'll yield my time to Mr. Greenway. Mr. Ray?
I'm sorry. Don't get him started again.
Mr. Ray, do you have anything?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to echo the remarks about Mark. I know that I was at your last virtual meeting that you had, and the professionalism that you showed and the students that were so engaged, it was very, they were engaged with the issues that you were bringing forward and what they wanted to see happen. And it was really a good meeting, and we thank you so much for being the student council rep. And you certainly have, you're bringing the issues to us, and I really appreciate that. So thank you, Mark. I want to thank Chris Lowe. Is he here? He doesn't have to come from his office on virtual, right? Which is delayed, by the way. Is that right? I had a teacher contact me about, she was concerned her workplace for the fourth graders was not going to be ready. So I talked to the principal, and Chris and I went down there, went to the school, and took care of the issues that were of concern. And I got a real nice email from the teacher that everything was taken care of day one. So thank you, Chris, for jumping on those and making sure when, our teacher had that request that we got everything we needed to do. So thank you. The vaccines, I know, knowing other school districts, we had done a great job of getting these out to all the teacher staff that really wanted to get the vaccine, and it sounded like it went very smooth. The time schedules and everything went very, very quickly and smoothly. And this is the beginning of being able to vaccinate and try to get this virus under control, and making sure that that we're able to get that herd immunity that we can get to at some point. Getting the vaccines, I heard that another company was producing vaccines, And that is encouraging because the more that's out there, and I know some of the other districts have not done as well as what we've done. So I do appreciate all the effort that went into making it happen. So that's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to spend some time talking about why I voted the way I did tonight on the sports issue. One of the speakers made a comment that maybe we were bowing to pressure. But I just want to remind you and take a little walk down memory lane to give you an example of maybe how this board member doesn't bow to public pressure. Let's think back to the spring when we were being asked to go back to school as normal, 5 days a week. Throw caution to the wind, the virus isn't real, it's a hoax. There were a lot of people, an auditorium full of people, who were telling us that that's the way we should go. There were some really prominent citizens there at that meeting as well. There may have been a couple of board members. There was one on one end of the spectrum, and then there was me on the other side of the spectrum, where I said no, that I would not. I didn't care if there were 14,000 people from Catawba who told me they wanted to go back to school full time. I was going to vote no, because I felt that the 6 foot distancing, the mitigation measures, we had to do that. Otherwise, Lord knows where we would be had we done that. And so, as a matter of fact, when I thought the vote was going to go the wrong way, I resigned my chairmanship to make a point. And so I firmly believe that we should follow the health advice that we were getting from the professionals. But 11 months into this thing, we've learned a lot. I've learned a lot. And one of the things that I've learned is that with our mitigation efforts, we've done a fantastic job at not contributing to the spread in this community of the virus. I mean, that was even Dr. Morrow said that. So I commend that. One of the things, and the reason why I voted that way or wanted it to go that way is I did care about, while the kids do great with this thing, I was worried about teachers, and I was worried about bringing the virus home. But through our mitigation efforts, I think we've done a great job. I think we've done a fantastic job in the 11 months of taking care of the health, the physical health of these kids. But I think where we fell short was in the mental health of these kids. And that's what got my attention. When I looked at what we've learned, that children seem to do very well with this virus. One of the things I've learned is that irrespective of what we would like them to do, they're playing travel sports, they're seeing friends. I know they're being kids, and they're doing okay with this thing. I do know that there's a lot of depression with mental depression and anxiety. And one of the outlets that students have is sports. And so, I was willing to take a risk and vote for a program that was an expandable program, but it was also a program that could be contracted as well. We heard that the decision we made about sports so far has not contributed other than an anomaly in a weight room. And so that's why I decided to vote and say it was okay to do that. Now, at the end of the day, I have to live with the decision I made. And even though it departs from what the healthcare expert says, it's, as a decision maker, you have to weigh all the evidence. I've done that. I've given it a lot of thought. And so while I know I'm going to make some folks disappointed who I care a lot about, I'll have to live with that. And I hope that going forward, we'll find many more things that we agree about than we disagree. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.